Hello and welcome into this, let's call it an emergency broadcast, Steve, of day one of our free agency here in the NFL. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Sicoli, joined here by Steve Tomasin at Dynasty Santa on Twitter. We're going to run through some of these defensive headlines because day one, listen, we haven't had a wide receiver sign. The running back sign have been Mike Boone and Matt Breida. This is an IDP friendly day. How are you doing, Steve? It's been a busy one.
I'm fantastic. You know, for non-casual players such as you and I, today was filled with excitement and activity. I see analysts posting tweets like, "Oh, there hasn't been a fantasy relevant signing yet." I disagree with you, good sir.
Hard disagree, Cash. I see you. Yeah,
this has been awesome.
It's been a crazy one, and honestly, I think there's no better way to start with it because there's so much to get into. I think that's the big thing. And obviously, since this is a live show as well, obviously you could be watching after the fact. Thank you for watching. Drop any comments you have in the chat as well, of whether your reactions to today, questions, anything we can help you guys with. So keep on going through there. But let's start with the big news of the day, Steve. So the Bears. I mean, listen, we knew the Bears were going to spend first in the NFL in cap space, over $75 million to spend. They spent it at linebacker, which was I thought they'd bring in one name, but they brought in two. They signed Tremaine Edmunds to a record-breaking deal almost, I believe, over $70 million to him, spent over $30 million to bring in TJ Edwards. I think the safest thing to say is that the Jack Sanborn truthers can be confidently thrown in a coffin, send the coffin out to sea, bury the coffin in rocks, and dump it in through the middle of said sea. Right.
So, are you like a wrestling guy at all? Like, have you seen that meme of the Vince McMahon faces?
Oh my goodness, the Undertaker?
Which one? No, it's Vince McMahon, the owner, where it's from this very old segment, but like there's a meme out there where it's like he's like sitting back in a chair and his facial expression goes crazy, and then he like falls out of the chair. That's Jack Sanborn. Today at the start of the day was like normal face. After TJ Edwards, he's leaning back in his chair a little bit. And after Tremaine Edmunds, he's the third version where he's just completely fallen out of his chair. So sad day, bad day for Jack Sanborn.
I mean, listen, before we get into the obviously the two guys who actually signed, what are you doing with them? Because me personally, and I already have a tweet I'm going to send out tomorrow when everyone rests down.
Yeah,
I think he's cuttable. I think you trade him for whatever you want. I think if you want to stash him in a league that's deep enough, feel free to. But he's not going to see the field. Like he'll need an injury to open up. And if you want to keep holding him, fine. But it's a roster clogger at this point.
Right. Exactly. He went from an optimistic hold, even a potential sell high option to close to worthless at this point, especially in the shallower league you are, the more worthless he is. If you're in this super deep, like some of us degenerates playing like full 53-man rosters, full 11 on 11, those kind of leagues, he's obviously a hold. You never know who gets injured and whatnot. But man, for our shallow league players, if you were holding on to him, don't waste the space. See if you can find an owner who hasn't heard the news yet, maybe, and unload him for anything you can get. But it's very unfortunate.
I think it's a good lesson to remember that I think we often talk about with running backs and receivers. Undrafted guys that get late day 3 capital, they're easily replaceable. It shows how the team has valued them. Jack Sanborn, undrafted guy, they didn't invest in him, so they decided to invest elsewhere. They view them as extra pieces as opposed to the pieces. And that's the problem with Jack Sanborn. But on to the guys who are actually taking the spot. Tremaine Edmunds, TJ Edwards. Both guys in a very relevant role, this coming season. Which guy do you want? Because that's going to be the question, is which one is going to be the more fantasy relevant name?
Right. I think it's definitely Edmunds. If you're trying to compare them at all, Edmunds is sort of, I would say, primed to take the Roquan role versus Edwards taking what Nicholas Morrow did for us last year. which was not much outside of the range of tackles, and even his tackles were very fluky. I had him in a few leagues. I was actually pretty optimistic about Morrow last year, thinking that playing next to Roquan, he would have some nice opportunities open up, and he just did nothing in the big play department. Now, obviously, big plays can be fluky from time to time, but I think Edmunds is going to be in the position to take away more of those big plays, just like Roquan was before they shipped him off. So it's definitely Edmunds, even though I'm not his biggest fan. He's been pretty underwhelming outside of last year in Buffalo. He's still extremely young, so he's got that going for him. And then Edwards is more of that complimentary, Morrow to his Roquan.
It's I might disagree a little bit.
All right.
Like I listen, maybe it's because
I love it.
Listen, I know Edmonds had a good year, and I know he kind of bounced back in a way. I don't even know if bounce back's the right word, but finally took somewhat of a step forward.
Gave us some production.
Yeah. But listen, TJ Edwards has been incredibly efficient and highly productive since he's entered since he's been getting an opportunity. And he was the guy they signed first. I know that's negligible in the scheme of money. That's what matters more.
Right.
But there's something about this that makes me feel like Edwards is the better player. And when I think Edwards is the better player, I think Edwards could be the guy that is getting a little bit more tackles and things like that. And also, Nicholas Morrow was terrible last year.
Yeah.
I think there's an equal world that both these guys chain up 130 and 120 tackles, and the difference is maybe one of them gets 3 more TFLs. Maybe that's the difference. And maybe you could be totally right that I think Tremaine Edmunds could be shooting the gap a little bit more than TJ Edwards was last year. But it's tough. I think Edmunds is definitely the athlete that you want to be betting on a little bit more than Edwards, if that's what we're looking at this point of their careers. But I think the historical tackle rates just with both those guys has been a little bit higher for Edwards. And at the end of the day, I think I'm going to take the guy that's cheaper in drafts. And I think by come draft day, I think they will be separated one ahead of the other by at least a couple of rounds. And that'll be the guy I'll be taking.
That's totally smart. That's definitely the better fantasy advice for sure. It's going to come down to those, who recovers a couple fumbles, who grabs a pick, and honestly sacks. But I see Edmunds going, after the quarterback more than a guy like Edwards. I don't think that's really in his skill set. So if Edmunds can get home 3, 4, 5, and anything above 5 would put him in. He's probably going to finish as an LB1 and probably pushing for a top 5 or 6 guy if he can get more than 5 sacks. So that's where I just see this. I always like to talk about ceiling versus floor. Edwards for sure has the better floor and is, like you said, the cheaper piece to acquire. So if that's the route you're looking for sure. And we see this all the time, right? These big names get signed these huge contracts and then end up being very disappointing. So do not draft Edmunds as a top 12 guy. I wouldn't. But I'm just saying the ceiling is there if he can get home to rushing the quarterback, because that defensive line is still putrid. I'll be interested to see.
Have not fixed it. They have
not exactly.
Fixed it.
I'll be interested to see what they do to try to remedy that just abysmal defensive line. So if that still ends up being the case and they don't do much, I mean, they have to do something, right? Then maybe Edmunds goes after the quarterback even at a higher rate than Roquan did. So I'm just saying, I think that he's definitely got a better ceiling, but your advice was spot on there for sure.
And we also have a new defensive coordinator, so that'll be interesting to see how it factors in. Alan Williams, who was his last stint, he spent 4 years in Indianapolis as the defensive backs coach.
Okay.
We'll see. We haven't really seen him as a coordinator. Right. We certainly haven't seen him as a coordinator with the 2 guys that he just said, I want those guys for my defense. So a lot of unknowns in Chicago with those guys. But let's move on to the defensive backs. A little thing.
Do you want to help out? Do you want to help out Thomas in the comments there?
Good point out there. Thomas Green commenting in there. Thank you for doing that. Anyone else want to comment? Feel free to. Does Edmunds/Edwards' outlook change in Chicago when they're both already every down guys? Can we expect a better 2023 points-wise? So I think they're both going to be every down guys because they're both paid to be every down guys. Like I don't think either of them are going to be playing 60 or 70% of snaps because that's an absurd amount of money to pay for a rotational or bit role type of guy.
Right.
I think they both can't get tackles on the same play. I mean, you get assists, I guess, but I think we saw the best of both of them last year. I find
Yes.
it hard to believe that both are going to either are going to take a step forward. Edmunds
Mhm.
probably has the highest growth, given that how good Edwards was last year. Honestly,
Mhm.
um, so I'm not going to project a better one for either of them. I think what we're hoping for is more of the same. I think
Mhm.
Edwards will regress a little bit because he kind of has to. He really dominated in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You have a change of situation for both, and that's always a little bit up in the air, a little bit sketchy.
Right.
Um, I'm very interested to see what eventually we're going to have press conferences for these guys, and the words that they use to describe them are going to be incredibly important.
Right, right, right. Yeah, where are they going to fit in the scheme? Um, yeah, so I just checked out. Nicholas Morrow played 100% of snaps in all but
Exactly.
two games, and
Yeah.
those two games he played 98% of snaps. So if the scheme isn't going to change too much, they're and we know Roquan was 100% of the snaps. Probably I didn't bother looking him. So
No, don't even.
it just feels like that these are the same roles that they're just going to be dropped right into. But is the argument is Tremaine Edmunds as good of a talent as Roquan, or are Edmunds and Edwards so close that they're kind of going to cannibalize each other, which certainly could happen. So everyone gets excited about new spots, new opportunities. I think for TJ Edwards, it's a stock down move because, like you said, he was the guy in Philadelphia last year. Now he's number two. I think that's pretty clear by the contracts, pretty clear by the schemes they're dropping in. So however, he should get cheaper, like you mentioned. So again, he could be a better investment from that perspective. Edmunds was the guy in Buffalo. Uh, he kind of took a while to get going there. Will this scheme play to his strengths? It's kind of a wait and see thing. And again, I feel like most leagues are gonna react and that, oh, Edmunds, let's just drop Roquan's stats in for Edmunds. And I don't
Yep.
think you can do that. The ceiling is absolutely there, but I don't think that should be the expectation.
Yeah, I think you raise a great point, and they were 100% guys in Chicago last year. Again, it's a new defensive
Yeah,
coordinator, so it's just hard to predict. But he does come
right.
from the Colts, albeit a defensive back. But he comes from the Colts, and the
We
Colts
saw
were
two
also two
linebackers eat
two
there.
linebackers, 100%
Hmm.
guys. So it feels like we could translate that over.
Hmm.
And listen, we had two Colts linebackers that were very relevant last year, so I think we could
Hmm.
look at that as even a baseline as well. If Nicholas Moore was flat out bad, you had Bobby O and Zaire Franklin, who were both weekly plays for IDP in some formats. So
Yeah.
I think that's the mold that we want, and the mold that we don't want is what Chicago had last year, where it was just one, and Nicholas Moore was just impossible to trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Right
Yeah.
on.
Let's move on to this defensive back signing. I was a little bit side. Well, if anyone's wondered, by the way, not going to take equal time on each of these. Jonathan Jones not going to command the attention we just gave to the Bears situation.
Oh,
But Jonathan Jones,
cornerbacks. Ugh.
Jonathan Jones had a very good season last
He
year.
did.
Four
He did.
interceptions, 60 plus tackles.
Yeah.
I was shocked that he returned, honestly.
Yeah.
But did you have any initial thoughts? Again, we can keep this as brief as you want.
Yeah, I think it's a nice signing. Cornerbacks don't really move the needle for IDP too much, so it's kind of like he's going to be someone that no one's going to want to draft, but he'll have a few good games early. People will start grabbing him off the waivers. Obviously, Marcus Jones is the exciting guy you want in New England at corner, and Jonathan Jones just your ho hum lunch pail guy. He's solid, rock
Lunch pail.
solid. It's his ceiling is all going to come down to interceptions, which is impossible to predict. So yeah, he's a guy that nobody will draft. But if you're in a super deep league, the fact that they resigned him, great sign. Might, if you play MFL cornerback,
That's
designation
why I
is
bring it up because
required, then
yeah.
yeah, he's a guy. He's actually a pretty attractive guy that you would want, but he's just not exciting. He's a little older, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
In his
this is first
late.
time. That was the other Jonathan. There were other Jonathan Jones. But
Oh,
this Jonathan Jones is a younger Jonathan Jones.
okay. Wait, there's two Jonathan Joneses?
I'm pretty sure
There's a
the guy that used to be
Jack
on Houston.
Jones.
No. Well, there's Jack Jones.
Oh,
The Patriots have
Jesus.
Jonathan Jones, Jack Jones, and Marcus Jones.
Right.
But I believe there was someone on Houston not too long ago named Jonathan Jones who
Okay.
played safety. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
He was older.
I don't,
This is a
okay.
younger Jonathan Jones.
Well, I'm talking about in football years there, Mike.
Yes.
If he's like 26, that's approaching being old in football.
Oh, come on. For cornerbacks, I believe he's 26, but
That's
he's 29. I lied. This was a whole diversion.
Boom.
This is a
he's
diversion.
Ancient. He's ancient.
This is a diversion. He's ancient. Basically, retirement home. Yeah, I got you.
Again, that's again. All these, cornerback leagues are going to be dynasty. MFL, like nobody's going to be excited about Jonathan Jones, but he's a rock solid guy, a guy you could probably plug in corner required leagues. So yeah, it's not exciting for IDP, but it's like a guy you could get cheap or off the waivers.
And I bring it up. I bring it up for the cornerback leads. I think that's really where we would be looking at someone like Jonathan Jones. And the one note I'll say is that we don't have to do much projecting for guys that return to their teams. It's just it's a much safer alternative than, the last New England corner that went to a different situation. And JC Jackson did not exactly pan out in the 1 year sample size we have. So yeah, I mean, it's something you like to see if you were a Jonathan Jones guy in a quarterback focused league. Defensive back, we're not really looking at as much. Grant points out that football years is almost equivalent to dog years. Not wrong, Grant. Not wrong. Not wrong at all there. But we'll move on to a more worldly IDP name with Javon Hargrave.
This one hurts.
Yes, this hurts you, the Eagles fan, and as the Steeler fan, I enjoy none of this. So Javon Hargrave, after his 11-sack dominant season, has taken his talents to the Bay. San Francisco 49ers have paid him over $80 million. Big, hefty chunk of change. What are you thinking? Eagles fan perspective as well. You know how valuable he was.
Oh, yeah, it definitely hurts, and we're going to have to hope our young guys step up here this year. So sounds like the Javon Kinlaw experiment is probably already over. Yeah, it never even began, I don't think.
Such a shame. He was so fun out of South Carolina.
I know.
His college highlights were as good as a defensive tackle guy.
I was holding him in some deep MFL leagues, and what a waste of talent potentially there. I'm sure he's gonna, these interior guys get rotated a lot. There's very few that play close to 100% of snaps. So maybe if Kinlaw stays healthy and he learns from a guy like Hargrave, maybe he surprises a little bit this year. But Hargrave should be a smash. We saw what DeForest Buckner can do there. I would put him on a very close to being a similar talent level. Ark Armstead, maybe I don't know if he's kind of one of those guys that plays interior sometimes, spits out to the edge a handful of times. So it'll be interesting to see what the alignments look like this year. But if they're playing next to each other plus Bosa, I think that's a recipe for disaster. And you could easily see a reproduction of this year. So I like it. I like it a lot. He's a great player, and hurts to lose him.
My gut reaction is that there has to be some negative regression just from the career highs he set entering age 30. He had 11 sacks. Numerous. I don't remember the TFL right now, but almost career highs across the board, especially obviously for sacks. Yeah. You can't imagine there was a better landing spot as opposed to staying in Philadelphia. Because you had so much pass rushing help that opens up the interior for someone like Javon Hargrave. He joins the Defensive Player of the Year and Nick Bosa in San Francisco. And like you said, they rotated every conference. And we know what this 49ers defense does year after year. Yeah. And they paid him to play almost every single down. He's going to get every opportunity to repeat. So in defensive tackle formats where you're doing that, there's not going to be many better options out there. And listen, it's still the NFC West, which – the Cardinals have not fixed their line. Seattle, I don't think, has made any adjustments to their line either. I think they lost their center, actually. I could be wrong. Pochich, unless he was ready with the Browns. But, And the last team in the NFC West, the Rams are an absolute mess. So, with a terrible offensive line. So, you could even argue he went to a better situation. And as Grant said, in the words of Marshawn Lynch, take care of your chicken. Go get paid.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he did.
Let me hit you with a would you rather. This one could be interesting.
Please hit me with a would you rather.
Hargrave, or I guess we could talk about dynasty purposes, or incoming potential top 5 pick Jalen Carter out of Georgia. God.
My
And I
my
picked them for a
my
reason.
instinct was give me the
Well,
sure thing, give me Hargrave,
okay,
honestly.
okay.
And I'm not worried about Jalen Carter's draft capital, by the way. I think this is something the NFL
Yeah,
teams are going to sweep under real
he'll get
quick.
out
He'll
of
be a
it.
top 6 pick
Yeah,
easily. Um, I mean, I, I, I think it's if I'm a contending dynasty team, I think it's Hargrave for me.
yeah. So they're
I
only
think it's the guy that I know can play as opposed to the guy
right.
that might take 10 weeks to maybe know how to play. You know,
Exactly.
great
I think,
prospect,
and
fantastic, but
right is
his teams are picking.
Carter for so I'm still learning my rookies.
Yeah,
Jordan Davis went super early to the Eagles last year
yeah.
and doesn't profile, but didn't and doesn't profile as like a pass rushing interior guy. Is Carter along the same lines, or does he profile
Carter's
more of a
Carter
pass
should be
rusher?
able to yeah, Carter should be able to get home a little bit more. Jordan
Okay,
Davis was really just blind hope of this man can
yeah,
run, this man is athletic. You imagine he can get to the quarterback, and he did get to the Jordan Davis got to the quarterback just in a very small sample size because of how rotational he was. And
yeah,
the question was whether he could keep doing that over a long stretch of time.
right.
Carter does everything, I think, is
Okay,
really the bigger selling point. But again, doing it in college is never telling you that you're going to do it in the NFL. So
mhm,
I'd probably take Hargrave in a win now team, which I believe Grant is also reaffirming in the chat. And if not, I'll take the rookie. And almost if I'm a middling team, I'll take the upside of Carter. If I'm a rebuilding team, I'll also take Carter.
yeah,
And I'd also be floating around offers to sell Hargrave just because of the huge news. Just because, like I said, he should be great in San Fran.
yeah.
Everything's shaping it up to be. But anytime you change situations, it's a little bit sketchy, especially for an older guy at age 30 now.
Mm. How about one more quick one? We can just go
Hit me.
off your. I would go with you. I think I would go Hargrave until I see the Carter landing spot. How about Hargrave or Aaron Donald?
Oh my God. You get a couple years younger, I guess,
If you're in a
with Hargrave.
dynasty startup, let's say,
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
startup, who are you taking?
I think Aaron Donalds is back for. I think I take Hargrave. I think I can guarantee 2 years of
Yeah,
NFL that I
I like
can't
that.
guarantee with Aaron Donald.
Yeah,
One, yeah, I think the production will be somewhat similar this year. I think the days of Aaron Donald dominating for 17 sacks, he could easily still get 12, which would
right,
probably still be better than what Hargrave could get.
right.
But
Yeah,
if it's a
that
year,
that's what's
hey,
tough. We don't know if he's coming back or not. So they're all bunched up together in our rankings. It's Donald, then Dexter Lawrence, then Cam Jordan. This is just defensive line, obviously.
yeah,
Then Hargrave, then Cam Hayward, then Jalen Carter, and then Trayvon Walker. Interesting. So yeah, I just thought I would give a couple. They're all bunched together right there. So some very interesting
yeah.
decisions for either
Just
startup
moving on up,
people
according to me, I
or
guess.
or what to do roster management wise. So yeah,
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
it's it's
I think
exciting.
I've been lowering Donald every time I look at my
It's
rankings
just impossible
because
to trust.
yeah, yeah. For dynasty especially, like
Yeah,
it's if you own him, let him retire on your team because unless somebody wants to
I
give
think he's
you
back for
something crazy.
2023.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
but
but
I can't promise you 2024.
in a startup, I probably would be passing for him on a lot of these guys.
Yeah, he's the type of guy you'd have to sell in season if you wanted to move on from. You can't even think about it
Exactly.
beforehand. And I try to avoid having those landmines on my team. But let's do a little quick hitter here. Cameron Sutton joined the Lions.
This
I'm
one's
mainly
interesting.
bringing this up because he had a great season.
Yeah.
Another guy just like Jonathan Jones. I think it was 4 interceptions, 60 plus tackles. Can play the slot, so we could see him
Mhm.
taking over in the slot if they want Jeff Okudah out on the island, and he also enjoyed a nice little step up this
Yeah.
year, had a much better
Yeah.
season. So yeah, again, another name that's more than likely just for cornerback designations. I
Mhm.
think he could if he takes an every down slot role, which I don't predict. He could be,
Wow.
a higher tackle rate guy, but yeah, I mean, I'm just heartbroken as a Steeler fan. Absolutely,
Yeah.
I think it's completely shameful they didn't re-sign him. The whole mantra of draft, develop, resign is what
Mhm.
have got them so far and what has got everyone so far. And they decided not to do that, and it didn't cost the Lions all that much to take this chance. So
Mhm.
silly, absolutely silly decision making. But Cameron Sutton's a Lion. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think he's a nice little target for IDP leagues. We saw, yeah, Jeff Okuda, was very up and down from an IDP perspective, which means hopefully he's developing more into that shutdown corner that they drafted him to be. So hopefully that sends more targets Cam Sutton's way. And we saw, even over these past 2 years, a handful of very relevant Detroit Lions cornerbacks specifically become IDP relevant. Jerry Jacobs, the Amani, I can't pronounce his last name, guy.
I can't either. Yeah.
I think he was a rookie and had like 8 picks or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely opportunity, I think, for Sutton to join this litany of productive Detroit Lions cornerbacks. So yeah, he's someone I'm definitely interested in now. I was already interested in him as a Steeler. So and he provides those. It seems like he's got kind of a nose for the ball and ability to provide some of those big impact plays when he's, like we said, if he's going to be in the slot. Let's see what his snap count looks like. But yeah, certainly someone I'm interested in. Absolutely.
The Steelers moved him around a lot, and we'll see if Detroit does the same. They could try to keep him inside more. Maybe they move around as the game plan dictates. But, the Steelers, some plays they put him inside, some plays they put him outside. We'll see how Detroit uses him in a similar way. This isn't a signing, but news today. Jordan Hicks did restructure his deal, which was originally, I think it was I'm thinking of someone else, but it was a big cap hit that everyone was predicting him to be a release. Instead, it was Kendricks over the weekend. So I'm bringing this up just because we have Minnesota's linebackers likely solidified here. It's going to be Brian Asamoah. It's going to be Jordan Hicks. We have a new defensive coordinator in the Browns guy, which I'm blanking on the name, but I don't like him.
Grant's guy, Joe, someone or other.
Joe Woods. Yeah, we got. Oh wait, no, sorry, it's Brian Flores. I'm dumb. It's Brian Flores.
Oh, okay.
Joe Woods was somewhere else, but Brian Flores is now the defensive coordinator. In Minnesota, and we have our two linebackers. We have Brian Asamoah, which I think everyone is projecting to be a lovely target this summer, and Jordan Hicks somehow latching on, staying on. So. Yeah, this was a headline that I just didn't want people to mix in the frenzy of today.
Yeah, Asamoah is going to be the sexy name that everybody wants, right? Because he's the young second-year guy. He seemed to have earned his way onto the field by the very end of the year last year, sort of displacing, I think it was Hicks. So it'll be interesting how they work out under a new coordinator, however. Is he going to give the vet time, the first shot at figuring it out? Yeah, it'll be interesting how that shakes out. It's kind of the similar situation to the Bears, where the sexy name is going to be Asamoah, who's going to be probably drafted a lot higher, versus you can probably now get Hicks at an incredible value. So I think for this one, I'm Team Hicks over Asamoah as far as startups go and acquisition cost goes. I think I'm Team Hicks.
Because of the age, I might be willing to pay the price for Asamoah in startups and dynasty.
Absolutely.
I might be willing to pay that rounds difference. But Hicks is going to be a tremendous value because you're completely right that everyone's going to want the flashy name. Even Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean last year wanted him. People overdrafted him, and he just wasn't ahead of a guy like T.J. Edwards or Kazir White, who they just brought in. So I could easily see Jordan Hicks playing an advanced Kazir White role. And Brian Flores, excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Excuse me. But Brian Flores, we haven't seen as defense coordinator in some time now, just a defensive assistant in Pittsburgh. And not that we were chasing the linebackers in Pittsburgh, but they were also mostly untalented. And Miles Jack was very usable for fantasy over the first month or two. But yeah, it's something that I think Jordan Hicks is going to be a great value. And Grant does bring up a great point that when I bring up a guy like Dean, who's going to thrive next year in Philadelphia. Now TJ was officially gone because Kazir White is a free agent.
Let's hope so.
It'll be Dean. No one's stopping him. There is a live giveaway that we're giving away right now for a signed Nakobe Dean jersey, which I believe the link to do so is by. It's going to be in this bio afterwards, but also subscribe to the YouTube. That's really how you do it, right? I mean, that's how we're going to do it. So subscribe to the YouTube. That's where all this amazing content goes. And obviously just check out the
Hell
site as
yeah.
well, idpguys.org. It's a great place to be. That's really the best advertisement I could possibly be. It's a fantastic one. But yeah, I'll move on to another name here. Jermaine Pratt re-signed with the Bengals 2 years. I know this is another somewhat unsexy pick, but
Yeah.
Jermaine Pratt bringing back, playing that, what's it called, that LB2 role behind Logan Wilson, had his ups and downs, was a much better real life player than IDP, but he was very
Right.
streamable at certain points of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you nailed it with your take on Twitter. Kind of a ho-hum thing, not super exciting. It's nice for his dynasty value that the team is sticking with him for sure, but I don't think he's, someone that's going to vault into an LB1 status and fringe LB2, solid LB3. So,
and we saw even when Logan Wilson was out, we saw when Logan Wilson was slow to come back, Pratt wasn't taking over for 10 plus tackles a game. He was doing his thing. Akeem Davis-Gaither was stepping up at times. Like it's fine. I think there's certain games where we can predict a heavier workload for him that maybe it's more interesting, but it's just a name that we should keep in mind. Now, an interesting thing that happened across the league in the NFC this time, as I'm typing out the lovely banner, the Bengals did lose their safety Von Bell, who joined the Panthers. Now that one is a very interesting situation.
Yes,
because he'll join. He'll be a near every down guy. You have Jeremy Chin, who is very much a box slot guy. You had Von Bell, who was very much a rush around type of guy. What is your take on this? Because I know a lot of people on Twitter had a lot of thoughts on Von Bell.
Yeah, this one could be very frustrating. Chin was already frustrating a little bit. He kind of figured it out last year, but I don't think had many very super boom games for us. So does that potential get worse now with Bell joining? I mean, it's not great probably for IDP, to be honest with you. So this could be another case of take the cheaper guy, which is most likely going to be Bell. So yeah, does he slot into the Xavier Woods role, which was, very fluky, he was like I
think that's what it is. I think it is going to be that Xavier Woods role.
Yeah. He's kind of
Go ahead.
He felt like he was kind of like the Gabe Davis of safeties, right? Where a lot of people liked him, but he gave us 4 or 5 good to really good games, but you didn't know when they were going to happen. So I feel like Bell could be on the same path. They're talking about possibly slotting Chin more into the slot. He seemed to be doing that a lot more last year. So this one's a tough one to figure out until we actually see it on the field.
That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping it's going to be more Chin in the slot. He's what I'm holding out hope for and some trust in is that Jeremy Chin is too good of a player to be off the field. He won't be off the field. And I do think Von Bell is a better safety than Xavier Woods. I think he's a better player.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's a big thing of they can keep him back there if they want to. And obviously it's not exactly how it was used with the Bengals. You had Jesse Bates playing more of that drop back role, but I have some hope for Jeremy Chin. You had a coaching change, and when you saw that coaching change, you saw a little bit of a surge from Jeremy Chin, but then again inconsistent. So I have to believe, and maybe it's just my blind faith and common sense, that they're taking this offseason to try to figure out the best way to get the best out of Jeremy Chin. And in their eyes, the way to do that is to bring in Von Bell. So I'm hoping that this means there's more trust in their guys to not drop Jeremy Chin into coverage and instead use them in the box slot role that they want to use them. So, and this also happened on Sunday. I won't talk long about it, but Shaq Lawson is also coming back. Shaq Thompson, excuse me.
Yes. Okay.
Which was that's a very surprising thing as well, because his cap hit was scheduled to be. Do you want to guess what it was? Do you know what it was? It was
Thompson.
Just take a guess.
16 mil.
26. I believe it was around 26 million was what it's going to be. So everyone charted him up as a cut, but he's back.
Holy
so Shaq Thompson will also be back. They restructured it, obviously.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah. So that's interesting is that they're keeping the gang all together there. Obviously, Carolina traded the farm as well for to get
Yeah.
up to number one. So there's also just a lot of what we're going to see in free agency with the Panthers is what we're going to see week one because there's not going to be too much happening in the draft short of
Mhm.
number one after the picks they gave up. So I'm yeah I'm excited for Jeremy Chin. I think this is a buy low opportunity for Jeremy Chin. Von Bell, I
Yep.
think you're right on the nose that it's going to be a little bit too volatile to trust.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. And on the topic of a Bengals safety switching teams, let's talk about Jesse Bates.
This was
Jesse
a
Bates
bit of a
getting
surprise to me.
I listen, Atlanta, unwilling to pay Lamar Jackson, gives out mega deals for David Onyemata and Jesse Bates, of which I believe combines to well over $100 million total, which obviously is not how NFL contracts work, but still $100 million.
Investment into these
Jesse Bates
guys.
getting 64 of that to play free safety or safety in Atlanta. You got some
Bad
thoughts. You are bubbling over. I see you.
bad franchises stay bad. The
Yeah.
Carolina, I mean, that was a flabbergasting number for Shaq Thompson, who pretty much gives us nothing besides tackles.
Yep.
And now Atlanta, dishing out money for free safety. It's just, yeah. I mean, Base's value was already on the decline, right, from last year, and I think he just plummets even more with this move, unfortunately, despite the contract saying that they're going to be invested in him and sticking with him, but it just doesn't make any sense. It didn't seem like a point of need. Richie Grant played
It's not.
well last year.
Richie Grant's fine. Richie Grant is totally fine. That's
He's
why I'm
yeah.
so confused by it.
That's
Just
all
because
you
what are they going
need
to do?
in that position. Fine is
Yeah.
better than most in that position. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think this just rock bottoms his value. So maybe that turns him into a buy because of it.
So
But
I just don't
not
know because
interested.
you basically
Yeah.
like Richie Grant was fine. Richie Grant had very fantasy relevant games even.
Mhm.
Somebody that was surprisingly productive over the second half of the season. And Jalen Hawkins is not that good. Like we know
Mhm.
Jalen Hawkins is not good at
Mhm.
strong safety. So what do they switch to the positions of one of them and try to play Jesse Bates as strong? Do they try to play, if anything, they probably play Richie Grant as strong instead of
Right.
switching the position of their big guy. But like
Mhm.
maybe they play more three safety sets and play both of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I truly don't know what they do with this, and it's very interesting they did this.
Yeah.
Um, it I
Doesn't
don't
make a lot
quite
of
get it
sense.
either. I don't get it, and I understand this could totally just create a Richie Grant, which probably it
Yeah.
does. At the very least, they cannibalize each other with the small work they should get.
Mhm.
But ew,
I know.
I listen. I'm gonna focus on the Bengals side. The nicer thing. Listen, we got Von Bell out of town. We got Jesse Bates out
Yeah.
of time. And means just Dax Hill time, right?
Yeah.
Dax Hill,
Yeah.
2022 first round pick out of Michigan, who is largely drafted as a leverage point between
Mhm.
the Bengals and Jesse Bates to not pay him.
Right.
Bates
Mission
ended up playing on the
accomplished.
tag. Yeah, Bates ended up playing on the tag. He ended up walking, and they're paying a much cheaper Jesse Bates. Now, do you have any thoughts on Dax Hill? Because someone else brought up a good name to me on Twitter that I wanna find real quick.
I saw that Tyson
You did.
Anderson, or he was
Yes, Tyson Anderson. That was it.
he doesn't have a hyphenated name, right? I thought maybe he had
No.
he was
No. It
Anderson.
was tight. Is a weird
Yes.
Tyson. It was a
Yeah.
Tycen or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we assumed Dax Hill's gonna head there, right? But
You have to imagine. Yeah.
crazier things have happened. Maybe
Oh yes.
I don't know.
And we got two spots open.
Yeah,
Those
exactly.
are
That's what
both every
I'm
down
not.
guys. Von Bell and Jesse Bates were playing every single down.
Yeah, there's still lots of safeties that are out there that need to be signed. So
Yep.
while Dax Hill certainly to us seems like it makes sense that he would fit, I'm being cautiously optimistic there. I'm not super excited going after him right now, or maybe you try to go after him and maybe the manager hadn't heard the news, but going after him in March probably will set off a couple red flags, and they'll probably look into it hopefully. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just think it's not as exciting to me as it probably is to a lot of other people. I
I
just
agree.
don't. I want to see where everyone else lands. We're not free agency hasn't even officially technically started yet, so we got a long ways to go between that and
I
the
named
draft.
this stream IDP Day One Free Agency Reactions because I didn't feel like typing
Tampering.
out legal tampering period. It's the
Tampering.
dumbest thing in sports is a tampering period. Just open it up.
Yeah.
Like what?
It's so ridiculous.
What? Like we're supposed to believe that the $250 million of contracts just happened today. Like they finally start picking up the no. What is the point, Steve? I just don't. I don't get it. It makes absolutely no sense to me. But I think you raise a good point. I think Dax Hill is a fun name, and Tyson Anderson, fun name too. But no stats to speak of there, and they're going to add someone. This is a contending team that's not going to let 2 second-year players just start off the bat, both of which really don't have a ton of experience. They're going to bring in someone cheap. They're going to Terrell Edmunds, is available on the market right now.
There's lots,
and they could easily sign him. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they signed Terrell Edmunds and a million safety. Harrison Smith was released, if I'm not correct. So if I'm not mistaken. So
I think he's planning to be. I don't know if that's like official yet. But
maybe it's not official yet, but either way, it's somebody that could be available. And safeties are easy to acquire if the Bengals choose to. I think Dax Hill will get the job, but there's 2 jobs to speak of, and I do believe they'll add in. They have to add a veteran to an incredibly young room. There's no way they don't.
So Tyson Anderson is, in your super, super deep leagues, if you want to go check your waiver wire. Yeah, if your waiver wire is open right now, and you're in, a mixed league, probably going to take 40 or plus roster spots to justify giving him a bench spot or potentially a taxi squad spot. I would absolutely think about that right now, but then just don't.
You quick catch and release.
Yeah, exactly. Cut if depending on how the rest of the free agency and the draft goes. Absolutely, but for right now, couldn't hurt to grab a stash in a super deep league. Absolutely.
Depth chart Warriors will tell you he's the starter right now. So that's that Tyson Williams. That's spelled Tycen, by the way, for anyone trying to find him on your wire. And he's also a Anderson with SON, if I'm not mistaken. So that is also just to totally mess up everyone searching for his name. But let's move on to not as exciting, but relevant and important to talk about. Alex Anzalone staying in Detroit. Listen, he played better than I gave him credit for. I slandered him all of September, and he got better as the year went along, as Detroit did. The whole unit got better, but listen, come on. We just had TJ Edwards and Tremaine go to the same team. We couldn't have one of them. One of them take Alex Anzalone's spot. No, whatever, man. Whatever.
All the Malcolm Rodriguez people are just, bagging their heads, right?
Yeah, but listen, Malcolm Rodriguez was the nice story pipe dream that I think exploded in late November. I think we saw that Malcolm Rodriguez is not what we want him to be. I think he's much more of an idea than an actual reality.
He got the Hard Knocks bump.
Yes, he absolutely got the Hard Knocks bump. And he played, and he was not supposed to play the relevant role that he did. So good for him. But I don't know if he's the highly efficient guy we're dreaming of. Either way, we know that's not Alex Anzalone. So what? Linebacker 3 relevancy, right?
Yeah,
he'll finish as the LB 28.
Right, exactly. Because he doesn't give us much more than tackles either. By the way, Anzalone, why missing Pennsylvania's own, where I currently just moved to, actually. So I'm trying to be a little softer on him than most people are. Yeah. He's usually viewed by the people that
it was collective really groans when
he grind the tape that he doesn't actually get classified as being great in the role that he's in. Probably not super great PFF scores. So, but that's all out the window when A, he gets paid, and B, he plays the snaps that he plays. So
that's what the banner says.
Until they bring someone until they bring someone in to challenge him for that or draft someone with significant capital, it doesn't really matter that he stinks. Along the same, I'm sure we'll be talking about him shortly here, but Alex Singleton vibes. Like he soaks up tackles and he gets you a decent floor. Right, LB2, LB3. He's not the worst guy to have at this point. After this year was going to be a very pivotal year. If he had been cut or signed somewhere else that maybe had established guys, it would be game over. But this changes everything. So I'm actually surprisingly higher on him, I think, than most people will. Let's do a quick would you rather with him. Hold on.
Let's do that.
Let me grab him. Okay. How about would you rather Anzalone or Deion Jones?
Oh, good God. I'll take the guy who has a home. I'll take Anzalone.
All right, Anzalone. Well, there's still. I figure if Jones catches on somewhere or if Cleveland keeps him and is named a starter, people are going to jolt him back up again. So
I could see that being him having more trade value just purely on name. But we saw it play out with Cleveland last year, and it wasn't particularly pretty there either. So
that's
the thing. I've been through this,
People have a sour taste in their mouth.
I wrote about him way too much over the summer for the IDP Guys newsletter, which again, link to sign up for that is in my Twitter bio at Michael__Sicoli. But that's he's not what he was. So I'll take the guy who will be playing 100% of snaps that Deion Jones probably won't be.
Anzalone or Pratt?
Oh, God.
Guys,
that's a good comp. That's a good comp for me. I'll take Anzalone on the off chance
I would
that it's just that I could promise more snaps. And I totally know what Pratt is. For some reason, I feel like there's a higher ceiling with Anzalone just because I know he's the linebacker one right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's zero ceiling with Pratt.
Exactly.
I think there's still a little bit higher with Anzalone.
Yeah.
So you just got me to answer Anzalone twice. Good job.
See, that's what I mean. It's a yucky guy, but you'd rather have him than a lot of other guys.
You would. Yeah. That is. Yeah. Those guys are both rostered elsewhere, so I completely agree. Yeah. But on the topic of Alex Singleton, you brought him up. I'll bring him up here. Signed a 2-year extension with 18. I stole that word you just used. I like that. You called him soaked up tackles. He's super soaker. That's what we call him now. Alex Super Stoker Singleton, who soaked up 160 tackles on 5 snaps all year long. So nobody was. That was another guy that I slandered early in the year because of how bad he was in Philadelphia, as you know, I'm sure. But what a step forward he took. I mean, he was for once his stats didn't quite match up to how, to what he was, but he was better. He was much, much better for Denver last year, and they reward him for it. I think it's an incredibly cheap deal. I believe it was around $18 million, like $9 million guaranteed. Yeah. When you compare to other deals that were handed out today, some that we're still going to talk about, and some like, Tremaine Edmunds getting $70 million.
Yeah.
Would you rather that, or would you rather Alex Singleton for 18 that you could release after 1? Like, that's a tremendous value for Denver.
Singleton, the analysis feels the same like Anzalone, right? Like they're not guys that score particularly well. They're not good in coverage, but they eat up the run, and those are IDP relevant guys. So another guy that he kind of gives you I know he's not that good at football, but for IDP purposes, he could be a nice.
I will say he got better. He got better at football.
Yeah.
I wanted to
sort of
hate on him, but
he lost his job. He lost the job in the beginning of the year, and then only got back on the field due to injury. So
yes, that is 100% true.
Did he get better at football?
That is
magically when people got injured in front of him.
Late part of the year, I will say, and listen, it's a role, right? And I think when you have guys that complement him well around him, you mask some of the inefficiencies, because I agree that maybe he didn't look or isn't as good of a player as everything indicated. Yeah. But I do think he got better, because I think he was picked on relentlessly in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
and
for good reason.
And even early in the year when he did lose his job, I think by the end of the year he was playing better. He was making noticeable stops. He was breaking up a few passes, even, which I'm never going to chart him down for. So good for him. And ultimately, I think it's just he got Alex Anzalone money. And while you just said, that's a similar type of tier, I think he is at least going to make a higher impact on the field for your football team than Alex Anzalone.
I got some fun ones quick.
Go for it.
Singleton or Zaven Collins?
Ooh, I like Zaven Collins this year. I'm going to take Zaven Collins.
Everybody likes Zaven Collins.
I do.
That
Yeah.
that would be a tough one. If I'm in the draft room, I'm
Singleton will be better for redraft. I will say that. But
okay.
I think if both have similar seasons, maybe Singleton is maybe finally isn't that good for real life, but produces. I think Zaven Collins could be good for real life and produce.
Gotcha. Singleton or Nakobe Dean?
Two guys that will probably be incredibly highly tackle efficient. Both guys that should be playing a decent amount of snaps.
Uh-huh.
Oh, God.
I know you're going to go with the youth.
I want to go with the youth. I want to say Nakobe Dean, but my brain's going to say Singleton because I think what I want out of Nakobe Dean is to be Singleton for my IDP.
TJ Edwards.
Yeah, but I want him to be that highly tackle efficient guy that we just saw in a 20 snap sample size. Right. So instead, I'll take the guy that I know is that, albeit with potentially a shorter leash year to year. But now he's paid to be a starter next year. He is going to start 2023, and that does offer some flexibility that guys don't have if they don't have that contract.
Yeah.
And it's a new defensive coordinator, so they said, "I want you back." So.
Right. True.
Gio Rivero now in Carolina, I believe.
Nice.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I did not have the next name ready. Yeah. A quick hitter. I do not want to spend longer than 30 seconds on this. But Chase Winovich, any interest rejoining? Chase Winovich is now in Houston. I know it's nothing. I know we flashed us with some upside, 11 sacks the first 2 years, then absolutely nothing since. Got shipped out to Cleveland, but now he reunites. Nick Cassero wanted him. It's nothing. I know it's nothing, but there is a absolute need for defensive line talent. D'Amico Ryans gets him. I'm just throwing him out here.
I'll say this: if who he's with in Houston can't make him relevant, it's 100% over.
Well, listen, yeah, yes and no.
With the lack of talent around there and the hopefully friendly system that he's about to walk into, I'd rather talk about the guy they flips teams with. The gentleman with the very hard to pronounce name, Agent 00. I'm way more interested in him than Chase Winovich. I'll say that.
What was the name? I'm blanking on the name.
I don't want to butcher it and be. It's
I saw that and it just got. That was something that slipped through the cracks for me because I remember seeing that. I was like, I should note that down, and I never wrote it down.
Agbania Akankrano.
Oh my goodness.
How
do you spell that? Let's
It's OGO.
OGO.
OOGBO, sorry.
OOGBO.
This is like Albert Ogunwavenu. This is I don't want to be mean and butcher the names.
No, it's fine.
That's why I just wanted to call him 00.
Okay.
I'm super more interested in him, honestly.
Yes.
Hopefully he's set to, play opposite Myles Garrett. And we saw he's probably the best guy they've had there since Olivier Vernon was there, who had at least one double-digit sack season in Cleveland, possibly two. So this is a young guy, an up-and-coming guy. Like I said, I am a billion, million, trillion more times interested in having him on my team than even thinking about Chase Winovich. So.
Yes, that's fair. That is 100% fair. I do think Joe Woods being out of town is going to help this entire unit. And listen, Jadeveon Clowney was on his last legs last year. So that is
the worst.
And I think that's a kind way of putting it. So it will be better. And I do think somebody that, had his breakout year last year could potentially build on it now. I'm looking up some stuff right now. He got a 75.1 Pro Football Focus grade on his overall grade, 81.9 on his pass rushing, which is higher than any defensive lineman from Cleveland last year, with the exception of Myles Garrett. So I do think that was in Houston, and, and Houston did not have a plethora of defensive line talent remotely close to Myles Garrett to build with. So I do think Okoronkwo, I hope I'm Okoronkwo, I don't know.
It's so hard.
Hopefully I'm saying that right. I'll call it. Yeah, you're right. It is Agent 00.
Yeah, I think that's a much cooler
Agent
name than us
it's
trying
so
to
much cooler,
butcher it.
Butcher it and be disrespectful to. So Agbonia, yeah, Agbonia 00 is definitely a name that I think is a good stash, potentially even a buy low. Not buy low, sorry, but just a name that people aren't going to be talking about because it's just a very low key name. Yeah, very good point to bring that up over Chase Winovich because I truly did miss that piece of news. Couple cornerback news, just to go back to it. I'm typing it in. Jamel Dean.
Okay. I just wanted to look up. He had an 81.9 pass rush grade last year. The Agent 00. So that's pretty amazing. He came on super strong. So yeah, he's really exciting to me. He's a guy I would draft at his ceiling, I would say.
And in theory, again, he's doing that with who offenses should be focusing on him when he was in Houston.
Right.
That's always something I like pointing out is who are they game planning for? It's probably for this guy. And now he's joining Myles Garrett. So that could be a nice name that all of a sudden we're talking about every single week next year. It really wouldn't be all that surprising. We know how productive two opposite guys can be on the same team. They don't eat into each other, they create for each other. But on the cornerback front, Tampa Bay brought back Jamel Dean, paid the man, I believe it was around $40 million. And Washington claimed Cam Dantzler. Two completely different guys because one was good and one was terrible, but both were relevant for fantasy for kind of different reasons. Jamel Dean was getting takeaways up the nose as well as a few PDs, and Cam Dantzler was getting targeted like Julie, I'm trying to think of my analogy, like Tom Brady targets his white slot receivers. It's fantastic when he gets all those tackles because he's being picked on. So Jamel Dean is definitely the more interesting name of the bunch. I don't think we could predict Cam Dantzler to get the sheer need, the snaps that he got to be picked on that much. But
yeah, exactly.
Any thoughts on either of these fronts?
Yeah.
Jamel Dean, I think Jamel Dean had very relevant weeks.
Absolutely. And he potentially could only be better this year for IDP, right? Because the offense is projected to be not nearly as good as it was last year with Tom Brady.
Yeah,
so
and it still wasn't even that good.
So Dean could find himself just on the field for more snaps this year, which I think obviously bodes well for his outlook to build on what was already a very nice year. So in your cornerback leagues, Dean. Let's see. So wait, who's Dean or Jonathan Jones? I think I want Dean. I think they'll just be on the field more. So
I agree.
He's probably the most attractive corner that we've talked about. Yeah, Dantzler, a guy to keep your eye on, keep on your watch list, but not really moving the needle for me quite yet.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Dantzler is just that they claimed him. They didn't, he didn't clear waivers. They wanted him. They made sure to spend their priority on it. And it's always Washington, so you take it with a grain of salt. Jamel Dean had 45 solo tackles last year. That's plenty of room to grow from that and still be, very good. So that's there's room for improvement where he could get up to 55, and I wouldn't be surprised. And that makes a difference on the end of the year fronts. Now I'm going to go to a guy that I'm sure it's for the record, it's insane. We're talking for 58 minutes now. We are still at fairly relevant names. I'm going to bring up one now that was a fun one last year. Cody Barton.
Yes.
Cody Barton. See, every time we think a little bit, okay, we're fading into just Chase Winovich's. Cody Barton enters as the linebacker 2 in Washington now, getting a nice chunk of change, fully guaranteed 1 year. I believe it's $8 million to get exposed and tackle in Washington. So what are you thinking there?
I would assume he has a fairly similar role, with next to Davis playing possibly a Jordan Brooks type role. But are we even sure that Jamin Davis is any good? I mean, Barton's got the chance to, just like Cole Holcomb was the clear better IDP asset than Jamin Davis since they played together. So I think that ceiling exists for Barton the same as it did for Cole Holcomb. So yeah, I'm weirdly more excited, or at least excited, that he landed in Washington with this opportunity versus staying in Seattle. Now, Seattle would have been nice because Brooks is likely gone for the season. If not, maybe he comes back towards the very, very end. So it was theoretically Cody Barnes' job to lose as the LB1 in Seattle. But I think we all kind of knew that they were going to bring someone in. There's talks of Bobby Wagner making a reunion. So I think, yeah, I think Barton, I'm oddly excited for the shot in Washington. Not only playing next to Davis, but easily could supplant Davis, because I don't think anybody knows whether he's good or not.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. What's interesting is Washington used one linebacker sets at a pretty high rate at the end of last year, right? I mean,
Right.
there was a lot of times where we only saw one of them on the field, and maybe that's because Cole Holcomb was injured
I
and
think that
John
had a lot to
Bostic
do with
had
it.
no right being on an NFL team, let alone NFL field.
Facts.
So that could be it. And that could be, they want to use two linebacker sets and they have Cody Barton and, maybe they don't use Derek Force as much or something like that. But I think you're right on the nose that I want Jermaine Davis to be the guy. I think Jermaine Davis gets the opportunity to be the 3-down guy, but he could not be. We're still waiting for that in the same vein of what we want for Zaven Collins, but we haven't seen it yet. And Cole Holcomb was more productive when he was out there, regardless of the snap count, because of the efficiency he showed on the tackle rate. Holcomb is now a free agent. Holcomb is gone almost certainly with this signing. So, yeah, I think it's a very good example of someone who could be a great value because of the efficiency he could have, regardless of the problems he could show on the
Mhm.
NFL field. And I think it does feel like this is the linebacker room they're going to enter the season with. Maybe they'll add a late D3 guy, but Jermaine Davis, Cody Barton, this feels like the room. Let me we'll do a quick hitter here, not to rub salt in your Philadelphia wounds. Marcus Epps,
Yeah.
also a name that had his moments at certain games, not really fantasy relevant as much. He was much more of a covered role, stepped up with
Yeah.
Chauncey hurt.
Yeah.
Chauncey's still a free agent as well.
I
So I'm a little
know.
bit nervous about that.
Uh,
But yeah, he joined the Raiders. Any interest there? I think Reed Blankenship is the next man up if they'll add someone to the draft. I think this is a Brian
Right.
Branch spot
That was a
locked
great
in.
call. I
But
love that call. Yeah.
yeah, this feels like where he's going to end up going, Alabama prospect. But I don't think we expect that much of a step up for the Raiders. The Raiders really just need a coverage guy, and Deron Harmon was actually playing for them, which is a sign
Yeah.
of how desperate they got. But wanted to throw the name out there just as one of
Yeah.
the names I tweeted about today, at least.
Another super deep guy, not super interested in shallow leagues. Raiders safeties
Yeah,
never, I don't think have done much in quite some time. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm and Epps was fine, would be probably the best word to describe him. So
yeah. Solid.
unless yeah, like I'm not too Reed Blankenship can easily do the same things. There's talks that we're going to attempt to sign Chauncey back, so that would be amazing. But yeah, this doesn't do
I
a whole
think he
lot for me.
returns. I think
I
Chauncey
hope
returns,
so.
and I wouldn't be surprised if they dip into the same vein as last year. They signed Anthony
Mhm.
Harris to a 1-year deal from Minnesota. I could see them signing Harrison Smith should he be released to a 1-year deal
Right.
there. Help out with that
Yeah.
that all of a sudden a little bit turbulent linebacker spot as well.
Mhm.
That type of move would make sense to me, and I want to call back to
Mhm.
this in 10 days if it happens.
Yeah.
But move on to something a little bit more interesting. Very interesting to me. This is honestly one of the more fun ones of the day for me. David Long to the Dolphins. I know they also brought back Duke Riley, who I brought up, really just linebacker 3, nice rotational piece on the edge. Never played 2
Right.
games over 50% snaps. You're going to see Duke Riley, his name there. This is a David Long conversation.
Mhm.
Tennessee Titans linebacker, a little bit undersized, but was incredibly productive when he was out there.
Mhm.
Now he steps in next to Jerome Baker, Landon Roberts, all but gone after his 1-year,
Yeah.
his 1-year deal up. Listen, I'm very excited for David Long. I think this is somebody that's been waiting for that type of opportunity, flashed with it last year, and got paid to be the guy that Jerome Baker can't be. And
Yes.
Jerome Baker's not that good. So I think David Long is locked into roles as long as he can be on the field and be healthy. I'm just worried
Right.
about him staying healthy because he's undersized and has an injury history.
Pretty much the only barrier to him being a stud is health. I think he could easily finish as a fringe LB1,
Yeah.
strong LB2. I may need to severely update my rankings because he might be a fun guy to, we see the stats that the top 12 linebackers year over year there's usually 25 to 30% or something like that repeat. So there's room for 8-9 guys to come in and be new LB1s for this year. And Long is absolutely a candidate to do that. Very strong on him, very high on him in IDP. You might still be able to get him cheap. This probably doesn't speak too well for Channing Tindall, who I was hanging on to in a few leagues, but he didn't see the field last year behind some very poor talent, declining Jerome Baker. So that was already not great news. This makes it worse. However, with Long's injury history, maybe things don't go his way again, and maybe Tindall does get forced onto the field. So, but yeah, I love this. The Duke Riley thing, maybe a backup IDP guy for, very deep leagues.
Yeah, it's really
I
not.
love this. I love this for David Long.
I think I completely agree. I am very excited for it. Tennessee losing another starter for the linebacker room on the other side there, or not. Yeah, I mean, they'll go. Let's take a second to talk about Tennessee now as well, because what's the room?
I was going to ask who's left.
Will and Cole, because I tweeted about it like a month ago because I was looking at who's under contract, and it's really, it's nobody. I think is the real way to say it, because Zach they cut Zach Cunningham. They let him go, as they probably should have, because of the money they owed him. Eric Kendricks. We have some breaking news. Eric Kendricks to the Chargers.
Oh,
well, screw what I was talking about. Let's have a little conversation about that. Why not?
Interesting.
Eric Kendricks, formerly of the Vikings, 8 years there. Excuse me, is now a Los Angeles Charger, which is interesting because the Chargers were also apparently in the running for Bobby Wagner with the Cowboys.
Ooh.
So is Bobby Wagner going to be a Cowboy? That sounds a little bit more likely now. But either way, Eric Kendricks joins the Chargers. Any immediate reactions? Because this just broke right now.
Immediate is that he's probably a very solid buy for a year. Obviously, he's super old in football years, so we don't want to invest too much in him in dynasty leagues. But man, a win now team for fantasy, for IDP, I think it's a great landing spot. Probably means Drew Tranquil finds a new home. I was taking some flyers on Kenneth. Yeah, I know. He played really well last year.
I liked him, man. I really liked Drew Tranquil. I tweeted about Drew Tranquil all the time. He was fun.
It probably means Kenneth Walker doesn't start the year that great, but with Kendricks being so old, does he make it 17 games? So Kenneth Walker's a guy I'm stashing in incredibly deep leagues. But yeah, bye-bye Drew Tranquil, and I think this will be a great one-year payoff for both the Chargers and potentially IDP managers who held on to or bought Kendricks super cheap when he was released.
Yeah, I don't think the Chargers are done spending at this room personally. I don't think they want to go into the year with Kenneth Murray again as their linebacker too. They declined his fifth-year option. He was flat out bad. Eric Kendricks took a step back last year, a noticeable step back, and I like him. I think you're right on the nose. He's going to be incredibly valuable for fantasy, but I do think they have to add another rookie into this, maybe a third-round type of guy. But I think there's some value to adding a proven guy that on a likely cheap deal. I don't have the terms yet, but I think he's going to be incredibly valuable for fantasy. And we know what that Chargers linebacker one role could be if you're just usable. You're just not Kenneth Murray, basically.
Yeah, I know. Another nail in his coffin, huh?
Yeah, and to quickly touch on the Titans point before, the Titans middle linebacker room right now, as far as I know, I believe, David Long is now gone. Dylan Cole is a free agent. Zach Cunningham was cut as of a month ago. It is just Monty Rice, pretty much, who is currently on his rookie deal. So they are going to draft somebody. They're going to add somebody. They have to. But goodness, this is a thin linebacker room in Tennessee.
Yeah, who else chipped in there last year? Jack Gibbons?
Jack Gibbons.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's under contract anymore.
Oh, really?
Or
I'm sure.
It might have been a 1-year UDFA type of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be more than happy to stick around for a cheap deal with the opportunity. So he's probably a guy deep leagues. There was a guy I saw just scrolling through sleeper like free agents and stuff like that. I think it's Chance Campbell was a. Let me make sure I got that name right. Chance Campbell, a 6th-rounder last year who I believe lost his season to injury. So there's a guy. There's a name.
Yeah, that's a good one to know. So say it again for everybody. What was it?
So Chance Campbell, a 6th-round draft pick last year. I can't remember what the injury was, but I believe no matter what it was, it happened super early. Might have even been in camp. So whatever the injury was, he should be back and ready for the beginning of the year. So just a name throw on your watch list. Again, maybe if your waivers are open, deep leagues, throw them on for $0 or go grab them off your waivers right now. But it's a name for right now until we see what happens going forward. But there's Monty Rice. I don't.
Not that good, but was a volume guy.
But at least he's
stepped up.
He was
there.
He's a body right now. So
he is a body. He's quite literally a body. I got one other headline. I know this gone long. I appreciate you sticking with me, Santa. I got one other headline that I was going to say, and then we have some breaking news as well that I'm going to bring up right now.
I love breaking
Another
news.
one, Zach Allen of the Cardinals, who enjoyed an incredible 2022.
Yes.
The Broncos have spent a lot of money today. I'm trying to remember. They obviously re-signed Alex Singleton. They brought in a new guard, or they brought in a new center. They brought in Mike McGlinchey for like $90 million.
Right.
They brought in Chris Manhertz at tight end for $6 million. This is an expensive retool we need to win with Russ. They fixed the offense, or they added pieces of the offensive line. They added another blocking tight end. Now they're looking at the defensive line. They're adding Zach Allen.
Yeah.
Draymond Jones is a free agent as well. So
right.
This makes sense to add another body to that unit. And Zach Allen was really one of the few bright spots of Arizona last year. He enjoyed an incredible year.
Let's see. How many say 5.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, which is quite a bit for a defensive lineman. He missed the last 1, 2, 3, 4 games. It worries me a little bit just because I think Denver's got a new coordinator this year, right? Too, I think. But
yes, because again, Avero went off, and I misspelled Zach's name there. I apologize because I was doing it off of tweet. That was wrong. But exactly.
So I'm just worried about. I'm worried about rotation. That's all. I think the Cardinals he was playing. It looks like he was averaging about 80% of snaps. That worries me. I wonder if that ceiling exists in Denver. Well, I guess we'll have to see what the new coordinator is going to do. So it worries me a little bit.
Can I ease your thoughts a little bit?
Yes, please do.
I'll ease your thoughts by saying that he was paid $46 million, 33 of which was guaranteed. And also, it's with the new defensive coordinator, which I should have known and blanked on, is Vance Joseph, who spent his first years as the head coach with Zach Allen in Arizona.
Right.
So if you want that type of connection of a guy they clearly wanted and paid up for in a day where they spent a lot of money, I like this, man. I like this a lot.
Small sample size, but wherever I think of following the money, Kenny Galladay just is burned into my head. So
sure.
But
I'm just saying in terms of usage. Also, what he did last year, we're talking about a defensive end / defensive tackle. And he started breaking out when he was moved to defensive end. He was originally playing at defensive tackle, and he was just not being used enough. But not just 10 tackles for a loss, he had 8 pass defenses, which is insane for a defensive lineman. But also 20 QB hits. 20 QB hits on only getting 5.5 sacks out of that. That to me says there's that's a similar ratio, but there's room to grow there. And that was on Arizona that teams were probably running the ball on because A, this is a bad team and most teams were beating Arizona. In theory,
Right.
you're going to see a better Denver team with more talent around it.
Yeah.
I like this deal because I think he's
All
also
right.
just a talented player. And have I talked you into it?
Yeah, I think you talked me into it. That's good. 71.6 pass rush grade. So yeah, there's a reason I think they recognize that he's got skills. Those hits and tackles for loss, plus got home on some
20
sacks. I think
QB hits is in
yeah, that's a
13
lot.
games. In
Yeah.
13 games. That's pretty darn good.
And they need to hit those QBs in the AFC West, don't they?
Yeah. Yes, they
Get
do.
them off
Yeah.
their
If you don't
game.
get
So
home,
yeah. All
if you
right.
don't
You
get home.
got me. I'm in now. I'm not as worried now.
And I'll throw out just one more, and it's an equally big name for today. I'm sure you've been waiting for it. Bobbio to the
Right.
Giants. Get in the call, get in the bag. $40 million to be the linebacker one in New York. I was initially not in love with the terms of this deal for real life purposes.
Yeah.
I've warmed up to it since, and for fantasy purposes, it's to the moon. I mean, listen,
Absolutely.
this is 100% snaps every single game. You can lock that in because of how this is a team that called up Jalen Smith
Yeah.
last year and was calling up Micah McFadden, this day 3 guy who was no right really to be playing relevant snaps for a playoff team that won a playoff game.
Right.
Like it was a signing that felt like it needed to be made, and they went out and made it.
You took the words out of my mouth, to the moon. This is also a team that, when Landon Collins finally got healthy, was playing him as basically a linebacker. So
yeah, that's a great point.
We're certainly in need of a guy to fill this role. So this is great. But anyone that traded for, was holding on to Bobbio, waiting for this sort of opportunity, is getting paid off here. So I think it's great, and he's another one who could push for that top 12 by the end of next year. Points per game or total points, however you want to look at it. I think he's easily a guy that could contend for that, for one of those spots. So I mean, we saw Blake Martinez did it for years.
Oh God, yeah.
So yes, whoever played Jalen Smith was giving us good IDP games.
Yes, he was. He had a stretch where he had like 40 tackles over a month at some point.
Literally, whoever gets plugged into that role is a solid IDP player, and I think we can all agree Bobbio at this point in their careers heads and shoulders above a guy like Jalen Smith. So yeah, I think this is to the moon is a absolutely perfect phrase for him.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a linebacker 1 year for sure for Bobbio yet again. And on the Indianapolis front, I mean, this opens up Zaire Franklin to be an absolute monster next season. Maybe a touch of EJ speed. We'll see what Shaq Leonard's at health-wise.
Yeah.
And whether he's assuming he's still with the team, contract-wise, the money. But if he hasn't been released yet, traded yet, it feels like he probably will stick around. But Zaire Franklin to the moon just as much.
Do you remember when Blake Martinez got released last year?
Don't do that. Blake Martinez was a shell.
Shaq Leonard was just hurt for a shell.
He could be, but I'm not going to assume it. We saw Blake Martinez be a shell. Nah.
I'm just saying.
We saw Blake Martinez being so washed that he got cut and signed a few months later.
Young Padawan.
I will do it. I'll have a friendly wager. If Shaq Leonard, I believe Shaq Leonard will be on the day 1 roster, and I believe Shaq Leonard will be very relevant next year. And if he's not, it's because of injury.
What was Blake Martinez release? Like week 3 of preseason or some shit like that?
It was. I don't even. We were
all flabbergasted.
It was like September 4th or something.
Because we were telling everyone to buy. I think most of us were telling everyone, yeah, he must be fine. They haven't released him, and yes.
At the very least, he might be terrible again, but he's going to be out there. Is the famous last words of the IDP community. And then all of a sudden they pull him and play someone else. But in this case, they just cut him. Then he pops his head up in Vegas. And we're like, okay, I guess, maybe here we go. We could do this again because of how hurt Vegas is. Nope. He doesn't even make it a game day. He plays 1 game and it's so bad that he gets cut. Doesn't even cut, retires.
That's true. To sell Pokemon.
Exactly. Power to the man. The man got his bag. Man was very good. Then he wasn't. Now he's selling Pokemon, which feels like that feels like the life goal for all of us, Santa. Honestly,
What are you doing with? I know that's literally living the dream.
yeah.
What are you doing with Shaq? I mean, I'm almost hands off Shaq Leonard, unless it's some ridiculous. I'm not talking about the end of the third of an IDP only startup, the end of the fourth of an IDP only startup. I'm talking like it would have to be around like 8, 9, possibly double digits for me to even want to touch him at this point, which equates to probably rounds 20 to 30. In a mixed startup draft. I mean, I think I'm hands off at this point. I don't like that injury, and I don't want to. Shaq Leonard or
That's what I really need to hear is because I was doing this. We were talking about this on Twitter with I think it was Leo at Master IDP, and bringing it up of like I was like, listen, I feel like he's a buy low. Like I feel like his value can't be lower than what it is.
Right.
And you throw out some names, and I'm like, I don't.
Willie Gay.
I'll take Shaq Leonard over Willie Gay.
Okay.
I think Louis Chanel could take that role as well, so that's why I'm not sure.
I like that take. Shaq or Devondre Campbell.
I refuse to not say Shaq, man. I want to say Shaq. I feel like it should be Campbell, but like I want to say Shaq, but that's
this. I'll stop it with this one: Shaq Leonard or Patrick Queen.
Patrick, oh God,
that's a tough one, huh?
I don't like Patrick Queen.
Nobody does. Nobody does.
Because he hurt us for so long, and now all of a sudden he might be just better in the role that he's now in.
Right.
I think it's Shaq Leonard for me. I'm going to hope that a year of pretty much doing nothing will get him healthy, and he's out there. And I do think the Colts will be run on pretty consistently, leading to some pretty good tackle numbers.
Fair enough.
I forgot to throw out one other name before, by the way, not to deviate from our lovely show.
No, I'm good.
Patrick Peterson signing with the Steelers. Yeah, I know you can laugh at it. It hurts me. And yet I bring it up because somehow he wasn't just a cornerback one. He was a DB one last year.
Yeah, he really had a nice little resurgence.
He had an incredibly strange resurgence. So Patrick Peterson signs a 2-year deal with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I missed that.
Where he says he's probably going to end his career because he only wants to play 2 more years and his contract's for 2 years. So barring a complete meltdown of talent, this is, that's going to be 2 more years for Patrick Peterson as a Steeler. They bring him in and they don't bring back Cam Sutton, which whatever. You. But what do you think? I mean, we're obviously due for some regression. Has to be.
Obviously,
he had 5 interceptions. He was 60 plus tackles. I think there's going to be a lot of people that Minnesota was just thrown on very consistently, and Pittsburgh could be too, but it's a better defense. They won't be on the field as much as Minnesota was.
Overall,
what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously
tell me how to feel.
A prediction of finishing as a DB1 again, I think is crazy. We have to see some regression. Obviously, yes, he was propped up by those interceptions, which are sticky and fluky. So I'm not counting on that. Maybe I'm in a IDP only best ball draft right now that's like 30 some rounds. If he's there at the very end, I'll take a flyer on him in a draft like that. But outside of a best ball league like that, I don't have much interest unless he proves it and is available on waivers during the season. I won't be drafting any Patrick Peterson in any sort of format, I don't think.
Yeah, it would have to be a cornerback specific one. Even then, I'm probably going to take the age dip of he'd have to go late because people are just not excited about drafting a 32, 33-year-old cornerback that had one good year after being mediocre for like 4 others. Which is why I'm not in love with it as a Steeler fan when they're saving like $3 million. They're paying, I think Cam Sutton's making about $8 million. I think they're paying Patrick Peterson $6 million. So a year, that is.
Yeah.
So, okay. Why not? I guess. Why not? I guess we're clearly ready to run it back with Patrick Peterson. Whatever. I don't know. The Steelers are still going to add to this cornerback room in the draft. They clearly needed to, and I think they downgraded, if anything. So that's this room is not done from being set up, but I do think Patrick Peterson's going to be out there as the top guy for it. I think he'll be a cornerback 1 almost certainly again. I maybe not almost certainly, but I think he will be.
Mhm.
Everything else, like you said, Santa will be a very will the interceptions return? Who the hell knows? Probably not.
Yeah, tough to
Yeah.
count on that.
Yeah. Well, that's what we got. So I appreciate anyone for sticking through this. That's pretty much the headlines I had there. And again, I highly encourage you to check out both of our Twitters. Myself at Michael_Sicoli. I've been tweeting about this nonstop. That's literally where I was pulling this from. And of
Funny
course, Steve
word.
Tomasin here at Dynasty Santa, a much better handle than what I have. Jimmy Ward is going to the Texans, but we do not have time to talk about Jimmy Ward. Nice little reunion there for San Fran.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing in new
Jonathan
handles
Owens
here.
done. They had brought
Yeah.
back MJ Stewart. I have that ready to go. I was saying maybe that's the guy, but now with Ward, so it's probably going to be Petrie Ward, MJ Stewart playing all over the secondary.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Jonathan Owens was always
But
a guy
Jonathan
that
Owens,
was was
1 year
always a guy that was a
wonder.
product of situation, not of talent.
Yes,
And
yes,
those
1
guys
year
could be
wonder.
nice for redraft, nice for the year, but never really more than that. So that's what we got. That was Jimmy Ward coming in and taking the lunch money of Jonathan Owens right at the end of this show. So be sure to check out both our Twitters. Be sure to follow at IDP Guys on Twitter. So we'll subscribe to the channel if you're watching this on YouTube right now, because that is where a ton of our great content comes from, especially from Matt Record over here at M Record at 21, I think,
21
on
yes.
Twitter. Some amazing fun shorts that we put on this channel here. So if you subscribe, you get to see them all. It's really great stuff that we have coming through. We have the off season, so there's a ton of fun stuff. This was an insane day, insane show. I appreciate you taking the time with me, Santa.
Absolutely, anytime, buddy.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy free agency when it actually opens. Remember, this is just the legal tampering period. None of these deals are official. Everything we talk about doesn't exist. All right, have a good night, everybody. I'll see you guys next time.